Great. And it shows live on YouTube and our Facebook channels. And thank you for those two items. And then put that in here. Perfect. I'll go ahead and double check that we are in fact live. Okay. Almost done. I already see at least one of our folks on here with us. Please make sure as you are starting to hop onto the broadcast that you give us a thumbs up so I can see you. You can also start commenting on the video so I can give you a shout out here momentarily, and we'll get started. Thank you for your patience. Perfect. Well, terrific. I think we'll go ahead and get kicked off and started. Thank you all for your patience, as it always takes me a second to just kind of wait on Facebook to let you know that we're live. And believe it or not, for as many of these as I've done, it still is a challenge to hit the share every now and again. So thank you for that. I already see on here with us Counselor Voles. I see Counselor Scully, Brian Dice. Thank you guys for hopping onto the broadcast and joining us. Tara, good morning to you. Thank you for tuning in one more time as well. I am Juliette Abdel, President and CEO of the Westminster Chamber of Commerce. And if you are a returning viewer, I'm so excited to see you once again. Please be sure that you also hit the share button on this video so others in your network can be notified about the great work that one of our area nonprofits is doing. And if you are a first-time attendee to our live broadcasts, you can find all of them, if you're ever interested in binge watching, in the video section here on our Facebook page. Of course, it is being streamed live on our YouTube channel, Westminster Chamber of Commerce, where we have them dating back into March of 2020. So feel free to kick back, sit, relax, give us the hashtag replay if you ever rewatch something so we know what content stands out to you. Now, you can also engage with us on other social media platforms. We're on Instagram and Twitter at Westy Chamber and on LinkedIn at Westminster Chamber of Commerce. My long-winded spiel, but every now and again, I throw it out of order so you feel like it's something different that I'm telling you. Now, I know that most of you are familiar with the comment section. If you are not, please get familiarized with it. This is located below the video. If you're watching it on your mobile device, it's generally on the right-hand panel. If you are like watching it engraved into a desktop or anything of that such. But this is where we will pick up any comments that you might have, any good morning remarks or pleasantries that you have. It's also where we will turn to for any questions that you may have for our expert that's with us. So we already have a couple of those messages that came to us from Counselor Scully and from Tara. Thank you both for using that function. And again, if any of you are starting to hop on here, feel free to use that comment section to engage with us. Now, our nonprofit feature is something that we've kicked off several months ago to highlight area nonprofits in Westminster servicing our community, our county, and sometimes even statewide. Today with us, I have Miranda from Growing Homes, and I am so excited to have her on here. Miranda, thank you for being a part of our broadcast.
Yeah, thank you, Julia. I'm very excited to be a part of this today, too.
It'll be so fun. And Miranda, can you just tell us a little bit more about Growing Homes? So for folks that may not be aware of what you all do, who you are, or maybe how long you've been around, let's get them familiar with our amazing nonprofit that's here.
Yes, absolutely. So Growing Home believes that every family should have the opportunity to thrive in communities that are equitable. And so we work side by side with our community members in three very key focus areas: strengthening families, nurturing children, and connecting community. Within our Strengthening Families area, we're really focusing on a continuum of basic needs support, focusing specifically on housing stability and food access. We carry this out through 3 main programs: Food Pantry that serves families 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday, and provides a 3-day supply of food. We also have a homelessness prevention program. This last year served 100 families. It provides them with support over a 3-month period, as well as information as to how they can get to a place of stability in their housing situation. And then we have our collaborative coaching program, which is a longer-term program that focuses on goal setting and also on ensuring that families get to a place of sustainability so that they can make those major goals like buying their first home or a job change or goals towards their family stability. We also know that families are most successful when we take a dual generation approach. So our Nurturing Children program has 2 programs: our Parents as Teachers in-home visitation program, in which our parent educators actually go into the home and they work with those parents to ensure that they can be successful stewards of their children's education. And so working with those children from the ages of birth to kindergarten, we make sure that the parents have an understanding of what those milestones should be and how those children should be accessing those milestones and really accessing the education and the developmental needs that they have so that they can be at the same level as their peers. We also know that parenting doesn't come with a playbook. And so we work with expectant parents and provide them education courses so that they can figure out what milestones are going to happen in advance and also mitigate any potential toxic stress that may come from being in a situation of poverty. Lastly, we know that no matter how hard our families try, there are various different equity barriers that make it impossible for them to succeed. So in our Connecting Community program, we work side by side with those community members. We know that they have the knowledge and the expertise and that they are best poised to be able to change the systems that are creating those barriers. So through our or community organizing work and our advocacy work, mostly around housing stability, housing equity, affordable housing, as well as food access, we work with those community members to address various different components of how we can overcome those systems aspects.
Oh my gosh. So I want to take a breath for you because it is amazing how much you guys are doing. I had a pretty good idea. And as you started going into detail on it, I was like, that's something I didn't know. So what I have actually done was, and I've seen already, Shelly has hopped on here and John Eggers, thank you guys for hopping onto the broadcast. What I've done was just capture, Miranda stated what Growing Homes does here in Westminster. And it is a tremendous amount of work. And so I've done my best to try and paraphrase that for you all in the comment section of this broadcast. But know that I know I've skipped over a couple of things. So make sure that you rewind and rewatch those parts because she gave some pretty crucial and important information. And I'm so blown away by the amount of work and support that you're providing to those families from even, before they become parents to once they are born. I mean, once the child is there and that dual approach that you're providing, you cracked me up when you said there's no parenting book out there. I was going to try and see if we can promote something for those would-be parents out there. I also see former Mayor Pro Tem Alberto Garcia is on here with us. And Miranda, I know I told you this, and here's where I start going from one thing to the next. We've got some pretty great comments. So I just want to pull a couple in before we start moving through some of the other questions that you have. Brian Dice is actually a past chairman of our board for the chamber, and he worked pretty closely with Growing Homes. In fact, at one point we had developed some sort of a grant program that we were giving to families between the chamber and Growing Homes, and I know that Brian was instrumental in that way back. So Brian's reiterating that you all are one of his favorite Westminster organizations he loves what you guys do for individuals and families in our community. So kudos to you on the work that you do. It does not go unnoticed, I know, by a number of community members. Our former Mayor Pro Tem Alberto Garcia is also on here with us, and he just wanted to quickly share his sentiments. Of course, he is sharing that Westminster is fortunate to have a wonderful organization as Growing Home in our community or in our city. Thank you for the incredible work that you are doing. I honestly don't know who would be doing it if it was not for you all. And that's no form of flattery. I just know that there are so many needs that are out there. And to see that you guys are adding so many of those benefits and services to make sure that people are successful, that speaks volumes. So I do want to be able to kind of touch on a number of other things that you have shared with us. And some of these services are outward facing, meaning that people would likely come to you all when you discuss the food pantry that's there, when you're even talking about the homelessness services that you're now offering for that 3-month period. How has COVID affected that? Was there a point that you've had to restrict your operations in a specific way? Did you have to create some sort of a system so that, you weren't bombarded with all those people at once and trying to maintain that, compliance and the guidelines and everything that was surrounding what we should be doing?
Yes, well, 2020 has definitely been a journey for everyone, and that obviously has also been the case for Growing Home. It's no secret, obviously, that this pandemic has had a disproportionate impact on people who are experiencing poverty. And when you are on that cusp of losing your home, of having this instability in your life, something like a pandemic can really push you over the edge. And so pretty much overnight, we experienced exponential growth in our food pantry. Prior to the pandemic, our busiest days, we'd see, upwards of 25 families. Pretty much overnight, we started seeing upwards of 70 to 100 folks coming in and needing food on a regular basis, day in, day out. Also, prior to the pandemic, we would probably have upwards of about 5,000 pounds of food each month that we would distribute to the community. Once the pandemic hit, we were seeing, we were needing upwards of 20, 30, 40,000 pounds of food a month to fulfill the need. We also saw a huge increase in the amount of folks that needed rental assistance, utility assistance, mortgage assistance, obviously with a lot of folks experiencing unemployment and our unemployment rates raising, the need for the services that we provided really did increase. And then, as you mentioned, we are seeing this huge increase at the same time of also needing to take on bigger restrictions to ensure that we were taking on the safety of our community and that was our number one priority. And so it was a very interesting journey. What I will say is that we would not have been able to accomplish it without amazing partnerships. The city of Westminster has been such a crucial partnership for us. Our space is rather small. And one of the biggest components of operating a food pantry during a pandemic is that you need a lot of space. You have to have storage space and you have to have a space that allows for people to come through in a manner in which they're not potentially infecting each other. Prior to the pandemic, we had a shopping model in that folks could come in similar to the way you would a grocery store and they could shop for the items that they needed. Unfortunately, we pride ourselves on that. We want to ensure that those folks in the community have that opportunity. Unfortunately, we had to take that away. We had to go to a drive-through model. And with that storage need, we actually had to move into the Mac Recreation Center, a senior facility for recreation, which provided us with 5,000 square feet of warehouse space, more or less, so that we could store these pallets of food that was coming in. We also were very dependent on retired populations as volunteers in our food pantry, and the number of volunteers that we needed to carry out a drive-through model really doubled. And so at the same time that folks were staying home trying to keep themselves safe, we also needed double the number of volunteers. So we actually had a number of city employees who unfortunately weren't able to open up the library or open up Parks and Rec facilities, who were able to come and actually work side by side with us to carry out that food pantry. And then, as you can imagine, in terms of those services that are needed, our Parents as Teachers is a home visitation program with children, with 2-year-olds. So we had to transition that into a virtual setting. And so things like, I don't know if anyone has ever tried to keep a 2-year-old occupied on a Zoom meeting for an hour, but it's a very interesting component. Also taking into consideration that a lot of our families do have barriers. Some of our families don't have access to internet. Some of our families don't have computers that can function with a lot of different technology. So it has been a journey, and there has been a lot of movement in terms of the way in which we access our community and the way that our community accesses us. And a lot of it really has just been trying out various different components that work and various different iterations of how we serve our community.
Yeah, it was a lot of trial and error, I feel like, for so many people. But to see the tremendous change that you've been able to implement, I mean, when you're looking at, when you say, a simple model like shopping to a drive-through, that takes a lot of work to transition from just being a place where people come to having something on hand that's quick, that's moving. It's a lot of manpower that's involved. It's a lot of things that you are keeping in mind, but it doesn't look like you've slowed down pace. In fact, you guys have, I mean, from 25 families that were regularly coming to you all pre-COVID to now in the 70s. That's nearly 3 times the amount of people that you were servicing just through that alone. And then when you look at these additional services that you were able to bring in and having to move into the MAC to source space from, what was it, 5,000 pounds to 20,000 pounds of food that was needed, that's huge. That's a huge amount. And I don't think you would have ever expected that or anticipated. I mean, like for 2020, like I'm sure you all were not thinking like, oh, we're going to outgrow all this. And, growth is always great when it's going in a slower fashion, when you're structured and you know what to expect. But when it's that huge volume, I mean, relying on partners was probably one of the smartest things that you guys were able to do. And then obviously your genius and your expertise coming to the table did help. I see Counselor Scully on here, and she is just making a quick note, reiterating some of these positive comments, and that's that she is always impressed by the work of Growing Homes, that she does love the organization that focuses on proactive measures. And I think the key in this comment is proactive. We get a lot of those conversations around the table, so many meetings, but it is an idea and it is a meeting that goes nowhere without the action that's behind it. And so you all are not only able to identify, but you're doing something about it to turn that around and make sure that those families are taken care of. So I think that's terrific. I also see Counselor Voles has hopped on here with a quick comment. So I'll pull this up on the screen and then we can transition to a couple more additional questions that I wanted to get out there to our audiences. For those of you that are just now hopping on, we have Miranda from Growing Homes. Miranda has gone in detail about the services that they provide, the organization, who they have been primarily supporting, how COVID has really changed that outlook, pre-COVID numbers to even during the COVID timeline, and how they've been able to successfully continue their operation. So Counselor Voles is sharing that he is incredibly happy with the many valuable partnerships between Growing Home and the City of Westminster to help our residents in need. So I know Counselor Voles is a strong advocate for those community relationships, those partnerships that are out there. And so very great heartfelt message. Thank you, Counselor Voles, for that. So Miranda, I have more questions for you. This one comes to us in terms of safety. So we spoke about how we want to minimize the amount of people that were coming. That's why we moved it to that drive-through model. You had this hiccup that really transpired because volunteers, and I think this is the case across the grid, volunteers are generally those that are a little bit more seasoned. Some of them have retired. Some have been around our community for a long period of time. So they have more of that time to spend doing the things that they would like to do and giving back to the community. That being said, you experienced a big, gap with that because that was the most vulnerable community and still is as it relates to COVID. So what have you been able to do in terms of, did you have socially distanced markers? Did you use barricades? Were you giving out PPE? What did all of those safety type services that you were providing to your volunteers and to the people that were picking up? How did that look like?
Yeah, and that was immediately, as the pandemic hit, our first thought. We wanted to ensure that we were not putting our participants in a place where we were creating an environment that was unsafe. We also had a lot of concerns for our volunteers, and especially given that so many of our volunteers were in a more vulnerable situation. That was our first step. So immediately we started working with our public health officials, with our county representatives, to really get guidance and to understand the best approach to ensure that we were accomplishing our mission in a way that was safe for everyone. So in those very first days, we immediately moved to a drive-through model because we knew that wouldn't require people to be in small spaces, and that social distancing wouldn't be as much of an issue if you were in your car. We also worked really diligently to ensure that we were gaining PPE in those initial days of the pandemic. It was really hard to establish a PPE or to even get PPE. You couldn't just go on Amazon and buy it like you can now. And so one of the things that initially really helped us out is a number of amazing volunteers across the state who actually worked really hard to sew homemade masks that we were able to distribute to all of our staff and volunteers who were working really hard to provide those services. And then, as I stated, we did start a drive-through model that a car could drive up. We would do an intake survey with them to figure out what their needs were, and if they had any very specific needs, like if they needed hygiene items, if they needed diapers. And then we would put all of that together and put it in their trunk. And then also very immediately, we started ensuring that our staff, they were not working in a regular office environment. And you can probably see this is actually from my home location. We still have that in place. We've been very diligent to make sure that we were in compliance with the request of only having 10% of our staff on site, 25% of our staff on site. And then, of course, with our Parents as Teachers program and all of our activities that require really those in-person meetings, we immediately switched over to a virtual environment. That also had to take place with our fundraising efforts. We carried out a virtual fundraiser in the fall, our first, as well as I'm sure a lot of organizations carried out a lot of this type of work. So it was definitely a new territory for us. And again, I will stress that it was through the partnerships with the Adams County, with Tri-County, with the City of Westminster, with our faith community. We have a lot of folks within the faith community who really stepped up and helped and provided the resources that we needed to ensure that we could continue without missing a step. And as you pointed out, at a very higher level than what we had been doing in the past.
I think that is also terrific. And so this fundraiser that you had in the fall, was this in place of regular ones that you generally would do? Or is this something that you've specifically done for COVID? And so the likelihood that you need to do it again, what does that look like for this year?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. So this fundraiser was a standing fundraiser that we had. It was traditionally an ask event with a lunch. And throughout those months, there was a lot of question as to whether or not we could get back to normal, whether or not we could do something in person. And we decided that it would be best for us to transition that to an online venue. We now are planning, we normally have a spring event. For those of you who have had the opportunity with our partners over at Total Beverage, we have this wonderful event called Totally Colorado. It's a tasting event. Obviously, that can't take place, unfortunately, this spring. So we are now working to carry out a new fundraising event based on the Top Chef model. And with that idea of food access and food justice, really, really highlighting the work that we do around food. So yeah, we are continuing to look at the virtual fundraising model just because we really have no guarantees of when things are going to get back to a place of normal.
I know. And it's such an interesting time, because what I always emphasize and why we love doing these nonprofit broadcasts is, all of us have been taking on more. with the same amount or even less than what we generally do. And so when we look at the year ahead, which we generally would do, right around December, November timeline, we're planning out what it all looks like. And I think we're all in the same boat, and we're just like, you can't plan too much because it's so uncertain. And even knowing what the math doesn't add up for you to be able to do something in the normal way that you would. So it's a very interesting question. Again, I was looking for that magical answer, like that parenting book, but I feel like we'll come out of this with those two. Counselor Scully did ask a question, and it actually leads me to the main question I was about to get to here momentarily. That really was around, how can the community support you? So we were talking a little bit about, these partnerships that have been developed between, public-private partnerships that you've had with our cities, with our counties during this time, that you've worked with a lot of these volunteers, from the ones that were providing you with masks to the ones that were, boots on the ground supporting you during the drive-through. Counselor Scully is asking, and she's sharing that she knows that you're, donation dependent, fundraiser dependent, like we've just emphasized. What kind of donations do you need, and how can the donations be made?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a wonderful point. We appreciate all of the support that our community provides, and our community is incredibly generous. And again, 2020 would not have been possible. The amount of growth that we had, and the amount of the community that we served would not have been possible without the support of the community. And so there are three major resources that we need. We need time. We still have a number of volunteers every single day that we need to carry out our food service. And that is something that, takes place between basically 8 a.m. and 2 p.m. Every day, or Monday through Saturday. And to learn more about that and the other opportunities that we have, you can visit our website, www.growinghome.org, and you can click on this section that is titled Get Involved. And there's a lot more information there in terms of the specifics of the volunteer activities that you can do. If time is not something that you have a lot of, I know for me these days, time is at a premium for me. So I typically tell those organizations that I love, like, tell me how I can make a donation. You can, on that same website, there is a tab at the top. If you would like to make a cash donation, you can do so on that website. We also, as I mentioned, have a number of awesome events coming up in the next few months. In March, we are doing a campaign where we will be both trying to raise dollars to support our food pantry, but also trying to raise resources. Our food pantry has a number of things that we get from the community on a regular basis. Every person who needs it can access a hygiene kit, so things like toothpaste, toothbrushes, shampoo, feminine hygiene products. We have a list of items that folks can donate. And so anytime you are able to help with a drive of some sort, a hygiene drive, that is wonderful. Diapers are also another need that our community has on a very regular basis, and wipes. Typically, we need those larger sizes. We get a lot of newborn sizes, but kiddos go through those newborn diapers very quickly, so they're not as needed. So size 3, 4, 5, and pull-ups, as well as wipes. And then food. There is a list on our website of our most needed food at the time. That is something that you can always contribute. And then in April, we will have this wonderful new event that we are excited to get folks involved in. One of the areas that we are excited to announce is that we will have a Westminster Superstar section of competition. So we would love to see some of those representatives who are on this call take part in that. And then, like our school administrators, all of those folks in Westminster who make a difference in our community, we'd love to get you involved in that.
I love that. And I have captured all of that successfully in the comment section of the broadcast. There are 3 ways that you can help: time, resources, drives that you can be supportive of, whether it's food or product, and fundraising dollars, donation tab that's on the website. I've included the Growing Home website in the comment section. I'll also just quickly display it on here. I see Michelle Parker. Good morning to you, Michelle. Thank you for hopping onto the broadcast with us. In addition to the website, what is a good phone number if people are trying to reach out to you, or maybe an email that we can give them?
Yeah, so my direct line is 720-407-1971. And again, any way in which you want to get involved, I would love to connect you with the folks that carry that out. My direct email, it's very simple. It's Miranda, Miranda, @growinghome.org.
Excellent. And I've included both the phone number and the email into the comment section, displaying them both for you so you all are aware. We had Miranda from Growing Home with us in this 30-minute broadcast, sharing everything that the nonprofit has been doing historically, what they've added on during this time, how they've pivoted and transitioned with COVID in terms of health, safety, and guidelines, who they've leveraged for partnerships, and then, of course, ways that you can support them and the way that they continue to do the services that they do. So if you are hopping onto the broadcast late in the game, know that this will be available to you at any point in time to rewind and rewatch. I see you, Christina. Thank you for giving me a quick thumbs up and hopping onto this broadcast. Make sure that you, if you have not already done so, share this out to your network so folks are aware of the need that's there, but also are aware if they themselves are in need of some of the services that Growing Home offers as well. And then, of course, if this is your first time on our page, we would love for you to come back with us. We host live broadcasts on a daily basis. In fact, we'll be back here tomorrow at 11 a.m. visiting with a small business owner. It's in our Feature Friday, who's a partner through our We Love Westy sweepstakes. So if you're interested in how to win $5,000 in cash, tune into our broadcast tomorrow at 11 a.m. But Miranda, thank you so much for allowing me to kind of pick your brain on everything that you guys are doing. The work does not go unnoticed, and I'm just so incredibly grateful for you all in our community. And I'm just excited to see how we can continue to support one another.
Yeah, it's been such a pleasure. I always enjoy the opportunity to talk about the work of Growing Home and to also hear that we have so many amazing supporters. I think the more I get involved with Growing Home, the more I know what it means to the community. And it's always such a pleasure to hear about that.
Of course. Well, thank you again. You have a wonderful day. And everyone else, I'll see you tomorrow. Enjoy your Thursday.